FAO is proud to present Mr. Rodney Taylor.
Hello. Today I'm going to talk about the link between deforestation-free supply chains and investment, and go into the progress there and some of the more recent challenges. So in recent years, there's been a surge of commitments by companies and consortiums of companies around taking deforestation out of supply chains. A couple of the pioneers in this were the Consumer Goods Forum, when in 2010 they announced that they would their companies would work towards removing deforestation from their supply chains by 2020. More recently, we've had the Bank Environment Initiative offering financing to support that initiative, with 9 banks involved so far. We've also had the Sustainability Consortium working on this, and many individual companies also making pledges. All of these are slightly different worded, but the common point is to eliminate or reduce deforestation in their supply chains. Then WWF, who I work for, has done some analysis on, you can see here, a business as usual projection of deforestation. And the headline conclusions are that we have a problem of governance in the short term between now and 2030, where we don't really need all the land globally that is being cleared of forests. And it's really a problem of weak governance that's causing those forest resources to be squandered. But if you go into the future when we have more people, a population of over 9 billion, and a lot more prosperity in the world, we can expect to see a real land squeeze, and the issues of driving deforestation will be much more driven by competition for land. And to resist those pressures, we'll need to produce more with less land, water and pollution, and we'll also need a shift in consumption patterns. We're also doing some analysis on where deforestation in the coming years is likely to be concentrated, and it's a relatively small number of places, around 10 that you can see on this map here, where we are projecting about 80% of the deforestation in the next 15 years or so. And so I think I'll go now to some of the challenges around these deforestation-free issues. The first set of issues are around definitions. And some of these pledges and some of the campaigns around them are really what amounts to close to an absolute ban on forest clearing. Others are more related to defining unacceptable clearing. And this raises questions about whether it is reasonable to expect that no forests anywhere on the planet would ever be cleared again for agricultural production or other land uses. Secondly, there's a risk that the market will be confused by the varying definitions of deforestation free, and a possibility of sham claims, as due to the lack of definitions, people make all kinds of claims in the marketplace which can't be verified. And that brings into the question the role of certification. Certification systems are out there in some of the commodities linked to deforestation, including pulp and paper, palm oil, soy. However, those schemes don't always have the tough prescriptions preventing forest clearing that some of the campaigners would like to see. And so the systems that are behind those certification schemes, such as auditing, transparency, dealing with complaints, haven't really yet been applied to the deforestation-free phenomena. And so I see a major challenge in building on certification, perhaps beefing up standards or adding optional deforestation-free standards within those systems, but not creating a whole new infrastructure around the term deforestation-free. And finally, a lot of these commitments are based on either zero deforestation, zero illegal deforestation, or zero net deforestation. And WWF has been an advocate of zero net deforestation as a jurisdictional target, in other words, a target for a country or the planet as a whole, but that doesn't really translate well into supply chains, where the boundaries of the supply chain may or may not be amenable to a net-based definition of zero deforestation. Then there's a second potential set of risks that these deforestation-free initiatives backfire, and don't really achieve the deforestation results they're hoping to. So for example, if we have a pure focus on deforestation, we might well accelerate expansion of agriculture and commodity production into grasslands. And in many parts of the world, grassland ecosystems play important ecosystem functions and harbour biodiversity in the same way that forests do. So we have potential leakage into grasslands. Second, if deforestation free becomes enough, um, there's the problem that the players in supply chains won't deal with the full range of sustainability issues, and they'll get to deforestation free status and go not much further. This is very similar to the recent attention to illegal logging, where there was a concern that companies would worry about taking illegality out of their supply chains, but not deal with the full suite of sustainable issues. Finally, there's a problem that the responsible players will simply withdraw from the high risk regions, and production will continue in those places supplying less discerning markets, but the leverage that the responsible players had might be lost. And then another issue is the pace at which these commitments are occurring. Companies are moving quite quickly to clean up their supply chains, which could be commended. However, the reality is that given that the problems on the ground are really about governance, that this is happening at a pace that's too fast to allow governance reforms that will endure to be made. Generally speaking, tenure reform, participatory decision-making systems and so on take time because the institutions and capacities have to be built if those reforms are going to endure. So there are some of the challenges I see in linking the voluntary private sector commitments around deforestation to the realities on the ground in the countries where deforestation is the greatest threat. And finally, this brings in the potential role of REDD+. Clearly, if REDD+ can help develop poor forest-rich countries to pursue development pathways that minimize the need to clear forests for the development, that will certainly help and eliminate some of the tensions between developing country aspirations and the idea of deforestation free, which is broadly speaking coming from big global companies and campaigning NGOs. Secondly, in the same way that we've seen a huge investment in getting readiness for REDD, similar steps can be taken to help producers become ready to supply deforestation-free products into the markets. And last, many of the companies that are setting aside areas within their permit areas and concessions need some kind of incentive to keep managing those areas, to be good forest stewards of them. If they don't have those incentives, there's a risk that they'll simply leave those areas, and those areas will be encroached upon by others, and we won't get the deforestation-free result that was intended. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for listening.